I think it perhaps surprised a lot of people because they saw you as Sir Andrew Whitty's protege and thought that you might stick with his strategy. And they also saw you very much as a sort of creature of the consumer health part of the business. So perhaps the enormous focus on pharma has surprised them. But did you know before you came into the job the scale of what you wanted to do?
Well, I don't think you ever know what the job's really going to be like until you're in it, but it would certainly be true to say that during the process of being appointed, I was making a case for change, definitely some things that we should continue with in the company, but the case for change was obvious because the outside world was changing and continues to change so much in our industry, and also because, frankly, GSK needed to improve its track record for shareholder returns. You alluded to the group structure. Actually, I would say there were two really big changes that we've been working on, and I'm very pleased with our progress so far, but there's always a lot more to do. The first one is to firmly and clearly, and I think it was the first thing I said, say that our number one priority is to strengthen innovation, and at the heart of that, our pipeline in pharma. And it's been fantastic to be able to see that now we have 41 medicines, 17 vaccines. We've had changes in leadership, a refreshing of the strategy. We've been able to go from last summer 8 oncology medicines in the clinic to now 16 following the acquisition of Tesaro, but also, and 3 for 3 actually, in terms of the data readouts we've had in oncology just recently. But also good data coming through in respiratory, in both biologics and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Lots of data this year in HIV, which is a very big business for us. Starts on new antibiotics, new data on the first TB vaccine in nearly 100 years. So I think we're making some good progress in pipeline. And having declared that our number one priority was to strengthen new medicines and enable them with new technologies as well, which is all part of the case for change. Making that the first priority for capital allocation was always going to have a bearing on group structure. And whatever my profile or the assumptions that people have made about that, I've been clear since the beginning that we were open on the question of group structure because we wanted all businesses to be able to perform competitively and critically have access to sufficient capital to do so. And when we were able to, first of all, buy out Novartis' share in our consumer business and then form a second joint venture with Pfizer, it became very clear that we were going to have inside GSK, the world's biggest consumer healthcare business, that was not going to be the priority for capital allocation. So the right thing to do, whilst creating, I hope, significant shareholder value along the way with $500 million of synergies and the eventual separation, would be to give that business its freedom to set its own capital allocation priorities while we continue with the pharma and vaccines business to keep investing in the pipeline and great execution of that pipeline.
I mean, you mentioned that the industry has changed when you were talking about the changes that you've made. What are the sort of pivotal changes in the industry, would you say, which you've had to react to and change the company to accommodate?
Well, there are both, like in any industries, there are both tremendous opportunities and renewed pressures. From the opportunity side, maybe every generation says this, but we are having this explosion in understanding in biology and technology at the same time. Yes. Whether that's all that's been happening in genetics and genomics, which is really something that we want to build some very competitive capability in, or the opportunity to improve the productivity in R&D, which is such a big challenge that comes through from AI and machine learning, or whole new technology spaces like cell and gene therapies, which is the sort of third way after small molecules and then biologics. So I think all of these opportunities to bring better solutions for patients, which is ultimately why the industry should exist, and really try and solve this tremendous challenge of it taking a decade and billions of dollars and a 90% failure rate of innovation by using some of these new technologies, either building the capability internally or through partnerships, as we've done whether it be with, 23andMe on all of the sort of genetics work, or new partnerships we're doing with academic institutions, like the latest one we've been doing in California with the CRISPR pioneers. All of these kinds of opportunities are fantastically exciting. But at the same time, as with many industries, this remains one that is, quite reputationally challenged, let's say. You have the strategic and reputational pressures around pricing. Yes. And we've talked about the changes that I've been trying to lead since I came into the role, but there are some things I absolutely want to continue for GSK, like responsible behavior around pricing and a commitment to access and global health around the world. So you have both these pressures and opportunities that we have to respond to.
You say it's reputationally challenged, and there's a lot going on even here in the UK, isn't there? Jeremy Corbyn has proposed a state drug maker. There's all the pressures and uncertainties of Brexit. It's all in all a rather difficult political climate, isn't it? Not just in the US, but here. I mean, how can you make pharma's case? How can you sort of cut through that noise to make the case for what the industry does to such a sceptical, political class and public?
So first of all, comment on the UK. The UK is very important for us because we are listed here, we're heavily invested here, there's tremendous R&D and manufacturing and technology capability here, but it's still less than 4% of our total business worldwide. So we care about the environment, but we are very much a global company, and whatever we have to navigate in the near term, be it here in the US or in other geographies, what we're focused on, and that's obviously true in the UK, is making sure we have an environment where the life sciences industry can continue to thrive and be competitive, with great, successful large cap companies, but also small and new startups that can then scale, and the right kind of partnerships with academia. I think in terms of some of the reputational challenges, the industry's job is two things. One is to behave well. And, I think it would be fair to say that there have sometimes been examples of some egregious behavior, which, we just got to behave responsibly for society in multiple ways. But the most important thing we do is innovate. And that's why these companies exist. We spend, $4 billion plus on R&D a year. There are still so many unmet needs. Every single person in this room will have been in one way or another personally touched by cancer, and there are still so many cancers for which there aren't, fully effective treatments, which means we need to keep investing in innovation. 1 in 3 of us, so you or the person on your left or right, is going to be impacted by some kind of neurodegeneration if we all live as long as we're supposed to. And there, at the moment, as we all know, there aren't many solutions to that. So we have to find a way for the industry to keep being ever more successful. And I'm so excited about what technology is going to bring to this, as well as the advances in biology. And I think we need to do a better job of communicating the value we add to society in that way. Mm.
And talking of technology, I was very intrigued in the summer to see that you'd taken a seat on the Microsoft board. What was your thinking, and did they approach you, or did you seek it out? And what do you think that partnership between Big Pharma and Big Tech can deliver for the industry?
Well, I think they're two separate questions. There is enormous opportunity in biology and technology, as I've said, and there isn't a single there is not a single pharma company or biotech company that isn't investing more and more in technology, and there isn't a single technology company that isn't excited about the opportunity to solve some of the challenges in healthcare, because every government, every country in the world is dealing with major challenges there. So, and just for clarification, the Microsoft shareholders still have to approve my appointment to the board, okay. So that's due at the beginning of December. make no mistake, my number one responsibility, accountability, and focus is GSK, and we have a lot of work still to do. I'm pleased with the progress we've made, but that's what I'm really focused on with my team. But it's obvious that in a company like Microsoft, which is R&D driven, where there are tremendous kind of policy, reputational challenges, regulatory challenges, there is a huge amount of synergistic learnings, and I'm very excited about the opportunity to be able to contribute to that board. But also I think it will have very relevant insight for my day job.
That's fascinating. And I'll just ask one last question before I throw it open. But are you conscious of quite a pressing deadline now to convince investors that you have revitalised pharma as you approach the decision about when to spin out that division and to complete the separation of GSK into two businesses, consumer health and pharma and vaccines?
Well, I since the day I started in this job, I've been very focused on trying to create value for shareholders. So it's not a new thing, but it is true that we have declared our intent to separate into two companies from around 3 years of close. So we closed at the beginning, right at the end of July. So, and I don't find it unhelpful to have a ticking clock, frankly, because there's a lot we've got to do, and I want to get on with it. We are in control at GSK around the timing of that separation for up to 5 years, but we know, because we've done it before, that it takes a few years to integrate successfully, which is what we're working hard on doing with the GSK and Pfizer businesses in that joint venture. And we're also working very hard on continuing to make progress with the pipeline and prospects for growth. You refer to it as the pharma company. I think it's really important that everyone understands it's a pharma and vaccines company. GSK is the world's biggest supplier of vaccines. We've just in the process of proving what we can do when we have something truly differentiated, like the Shingrix vaccine, which is just, I think up until Q3, we're on about 1.3 billion of sales with that, which is still relatively new. And we're very excited about how science is advancing for more of a move towards therapeutic vaccines as well as preventative ones. And let's face it, in a world where there are economic challenges around healthcare, there is nothing cheaper than preventing disease. So we're excited about that part of the business too.
Ultimately, a sort of value-added medicine, you could say, yes. I think we've got time for sort of one or two questions. Anybody? Oh, yes, Melanie over there. Yes.
Hello, Melanie. I can hear you if you just want to check. Yeah, just...
yes.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much for a very interesting talk and great question, Sarah. A lot of people talk about the changes within the R&D organisation at GSK over the years, and I wonder how much you're doing or are worried about that softer side, that sort of cultural impact of another change on the people working within the company, and what you have done, as you've come in with your own leadership style and your own, I presume, cultural sort of priorities. What are a couple of things that you've done to try to incentivize and reassure that this isn't another 2-year thing, and it's actually a long-term process that hopefully will be minimally disruptive?
Well, it's a great question, and I really do think that I've always believed that the question of culture is absolutely fundamental for any organisation, both because when you want to drive a lot of change, culture can be a fantastic accelerator. And it's mainly defined not by your values and expectations you write up on walls, but the way that leadership behaves. But it also can be a complete derailer if you get it wrong, either by causing paralysis or kind of churn, or worse, actually, and mistakes can be made. And we must never forget the responsibilities we have in our industry that culture can kind of impact if you get it wrong. But I'm so convinced it's critical that, when I laid out the priorities for the company, we said innovation, performance, and trust, IPT, a bit gimmicky, but that's how we do it, and to the power of C, as in culture is, and a definition of the kind of culture we want is absolutely fundamental. And actually, if you look at the structural changes that we put through R&D, they're not that significant, because you're right that if you kind of spend the time moving around the deck chairs, as they say, or kind of reorganizing and restructuring, when it takes such a long time and so much dedication and frankly courage to keep going around assets, it can be enormously disruptive. So the changes we were trying to make in R&D were actually more around, and there were some structural ones, but more around governance, decision-making, the partnership between research and development and our commercial teams, making sure that we didn't have a lot of science going on with tremendously exciting science that wasn't able to then convert into a competitive and exciting medicine. Really looking at the way we make decisions. We're big fans of single-point accountability decision-making, which was probably, from a cultural point of view, has been very new for GSK, which is, like many multinationals, been a heavily matrixed, in its worst examples, a bit government department. And that has an impact on speed, it has an impact on motivation, it has an impact on, frankly, the quality of decisions. So that would be, a couple of examples there.
Ready to step up for that accountability?
Well, it's a great point. And actually, as always, when you listen to the people inside the company, you don't need, forgive me the consultants in the room, but you don't need a lot of hugely expensive external insight. It's usually inside the company that people know the changes that they want to be made. And for some people, though, it has been uncomfortable. But it's another reason why I think updating talent, not because people that have gone before haven't done incredibly important things, and in some cases been successful for a period before, but sometimes when you're redesigning and resetting what you want to do for the next chapter, you need to have fit-for-purpose leaders who embrace the kind of culture that you want.
Great. Do we have just one final question? Yes, I think that'll have to be the last, sadly. But,
Simon Tate from Bridge Valley Ventures. I have a question about R&D.
Sure.
GSK has a tremendous legacy in neurology and psychiatry with drugs for depression, epilepsy, and bipolar disorder. It's not a current focus. You just mentioned neurodegeneration, actually. I wonder, especially when you think about the opioid crisis in the US, the desire to find better painkillers, the desire to find better drugs in those classes, whether you think about that, whether you discuss it at a leadership level about getting back into an area where you're very focused on oncology, immunology at the moment, and of course vaccines, whether you would see a route back into neuroscience?
Well, so first of all, we defined, very important question, we define immunology in its broadest sense. It's not just about RA and OA. The reason we defined our R&D approach as the science of immunology, genetics and new technologies is actually, there's more and more evidence, and you probably mostly know I'm not a scientist, but the opportunities and the understanding around immunology is influencing far more than just the kind of classically defined immunologists' spaces. And actually, we specifically haven't said we want to be, an oncology company. Everyone's spotting that and commenting on it because we've reinvested in that space. What we want to do is follow the science at the early stages. And where we spot an opportunity to do something truly differentiated, we will follow it. And so in that sense, I don't think we're closed. We're trying to open the funnel very broadly at a research end and then make much tougher choices in the allocation of capital earlier, for holding the bar quite high to get in terms of what we will then pursue for later development. So specifically to your question of pain relief, which is obviously a point very well made, we have gone into a phase 3 in RA with an asset, AGM-CSF, which we think may, we'll see how the data plays out, but have a differentiated benefit in a highly competitive class around pain. The other thing I would point out is in our consumer business, we are world leaders in over-the-counter pain relief. We now have with the merger with Pfizer, we've got 3 out of the 4 top over-the-counter pain relievers, and so we're very thoughtful also about how to engage at the earlier stages in preventative and more wellness addressing of pain. And I think if we through our research stages found opportunities in other areas that you've referred to, then we would definitely follow them.
Thanks so much. Sadly, we're going to have to draw this to a close at some point at this point, but thank you so much, Emma.
Thank you.